The morning after she leaves is never loud. It's quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound like guilt. Her coffee mug is still in the sink, her scent still on the pillow, her name still on the bills. You stand in the kitchen staring at the empty chair and wonder how a whole life can disappear overnight. She's posting quotes about healing. You're Googling how to cancel joint accounts. She looks lighter, freer, almost glowing, while you feel like a man who's been erased from his own story. And here's the cruel truth. Divorce doesn't destroy both people equally. It rewards one with reinvention and punishes the other with reflection. Because when a man loses his marriage, he doesn't just lose love, he loses identity. And when a woman leaves, she doesn't just walk away, she walks into a world built to protect her. No one prepares men for the quiet part of divorce. The days after the papers are signed, when the noise stops but the damage hasn't even begun to settle. Everyone talks about the legal battle, the custody fight, the financial loss, but the real war happens in his mind. It's waking up to a house that feels colder, to a routine that suddenly doesn't make sense. It's realizing that every habit, every comfort, every small act of care revolved around someone who's no longer there. In the beginning, he tells himself he's fine. He buries the ache under logic. It happens to everyone. I'll bounce back. But the truth is, something deeper is breaking. Men build identity through stability, through providing, protecting, through the structure of family. When that structure collapses, it's not just heartbreak, it's an existential crisis. Because the life he built wasn't just a marriage, it was a map. And now every direction feels wrong. Meanwhile, she's surrounded by sympathy. Her friends rally, her family visits. The world calls her brave for starting over. He's called lucky if he doesn't lose everything, but inside he's lost far more than half his income. He's lost the sense of being necessary, and that's what hits hardest. Men don't just grieve the person, they grieve the purpose. For years, his worth was measured by how well he served, how much he provided, how deeply he showed up. When she leaves, that purpose evaporates. He's left standing in the ruins of his own effort, wondering if it ever meant anything. The silent crash isn't loud, because men are taught not to make noise. They implode quietly, at work, at night, in traffic. They smile through court dates. They laugh with friends. But underneath, they're disoriented souls trying to rebuild from rubble no one else can see. And as he falls, she begins to rise. Not because she's stronger, but because the world catches her when she jumps. He stays behind trying to fix what's already on fire. When a marriage ends, people say it's tragic for both sides. But that's not entirely true. The system doesn't treat both equally. It cushions her landing and hardens his. It tells her she's brave for leaving, while telling him to man up and move on. The imbalance isn't just financial, it's emotional, social, and cultural. A woman can fall apart publicly and be comforted. A man collapses silently and is judged for not holding it together. Modern divorce, whether intentional or not, is structured to protect her from the fallout of her choices. Alimony, child support, property division, all born from a time when women were truly dependent. But now that protection remains while the context has changed. The court assumes she needs help and he owes it. She walks away with security. He walks away with debt, sometimes literally, always emotionally. But the deeper issue isn't just legal, it's psychological. Society empathizes with women's pain because it's visible, expressed, emotional, shared. Men's pain hides behind composure. It's dismissed as ego, control, or bitterness. When she breaks down, she's healing. When he breaks down, he's weak. The cultural narrative rewards her vulnerability and punishes his. Even her social environment reinforces recovery. She joins support groups, receives validation, posts cryptic quotes about empowerment, and the world applauds. He disappears into work, tries therapy once, and gives up when it feels like pity. She rebuilds her image. He rebuilds his finances. She gets emotional comfort. He gets monthly reminders in the form of deductions. None of this is to vilify women. It's to expose how the structure itself reinforces imbalance. When a woman ends a marriage, she can reframe the story as liberation. When a man loses one, he's told to learn his lesson. It's the same event, but two completely different experiences. The truth is, men don't just lose the marriage. They lose the world that validated their role within it. A man's social value for most of his life comes from being useful, to his partner, his family, his responsibilities. Divorce strips him of that utility overnight. She becomes free. He becomes spare. And yet the system congratulates her for survival, while ignoring the fact that he's the one bleeding quietly in the background, paying the price, financially, emotionally, and spiritually, for a story that rarely shows his side. She jumps from the burning house knowing there's a mattress waiting below. He stays behind, trying to fix the fire that already consumed everything. There's a reason divorce breaks men differently, and it starts in biology, not the courtroom. Men and women process loss through entirely different evolutionary systems. For a woman, survival has always meant adaptability. Her biology is designed to rebuild, to secure resources, safety, and stability. When a relationship ends, that ancient mechanism kicks in. She seeks structure, not sentiment. Emotionally, she may cry, but biologically, she recalibrates. For a man, survival is legacy. His instinct isn't to adapt, it's to protect, to provide, to endure. His entire hormonal and psychological wiring rewards long-term investment. That's why when a marriage collapses, he doesn't just lose a partner, he loses the mission his biology was built around. His mind doesn't register it as change, it registers it as failure. And failure to the masculine psyche is lethal. That's why so many men fall into silent self-doubt and depression after divorce. They aren't just grieving love, they're grieving the loss of purpose. His dopamine doesn't spike through novelty like hers does. It thrives on progress, on building something over time. When that structure disappears, his brain chemistry flattens. The same focus that once made him reliable now makes him trapped inside his own loss. Women, on the other hand, experience a surge of hormonal recalibration after separation. Her cortisol drops as she detaches. Her oxytocin seeks new connections. Her body literally begins to rebuild identity. This doesn't mean she's happier, it means she's biologically allowed to move on faster. Her instinct says survive. His says repair. And here's the cruel irony. The more loyal and invested the man, the harder his biology punishes him. The deeper his commitment, the heavier the withdrawal, because his emotional ecosystem wasn't built for change, it was built for permanence. This isn't about strength or weakness, it's about design. She's wired to pivot, he's wired to persevere. That's why she adapts and he obsesses, why she reinvents and he replays. Evolution gave her emotional elasticity and gave him emotional gravity. The result is a psychological imbalance that no amount of fairness laws or advice columns can fix. She metabolizes loss, he memorializes it. Divorce doesn't just end a relationship, it triggers a biological script written long before modern marriage existed. And in that script, one adapts, the other endures. Modern culture doesn't just cushion women after divorce, it glorifies them. There's an entire industry built around her reinvention. Self-love, retreats, empowerment podcasts, best-selling memoirs about rediscovery. Her story is rewritten before the ink on the divorce papers dries. She wasn't leaving a marriage, she was liberating herself. The narrative crowns her the hero for walking away. Meanwhile, his version of the same story gets erased. When a man speaks about the pain of divorce, he's told he's bitter, controlling, insecure. When a woman shares her side, she's brave, healing, finding her truth. The world wants her tears on Instagram, but his silence in private. Society forgives her for choosing happiness, but punishes him for losing his anchor. Every story needs a villain, and in this one, he fits the role perfectly. He's cast as the emotionally unavailable husband, the inattentive partner, the man who didn't make her feel seen. It doesn't matter whether it's true. The archetype serves a purpose. It gives her moral permission to move on without guilt, because if he's the oppressor, she's the survivor. This cultural bias isn't always malicious, it's psychological. Society empathizes with visible pain, and women display it better. Their heartbreak is poetic. His is silent. Their wounds invite comfort. His make people uncomfortable. We reward emotional transparency in women and emotional control in men, until that control looks like coldness. Then we punish them for it. So when she leaves, the world rallies around her. When he breaks, no one notices. She's told her story matters. He's told to focus on work. But every "you'll be fine" cuts deeper, because what he really hears is "you don't matter." Over time, this narrative becomes self-fulfilling. She's encouraged to rebuild. He's expected to disappear. One is seen as reborn, the other as replaced. And that's how the cultural imbalance sustains itself, through selective empathy dressed as progress. Because in today's story of divorce, she becomes a phoenix. He becomes the ashes. The first shock of divorce hits the heart. The second one hits the bank account, and that one cuts deeper than most people realize, because money for men isn't just currency, it's identity. It's proof of stability, control, contribution. It's the language through which they love, protect, and provide. And when half of it vanishes overnight, it's not just a financial loss, it's an existential wound. He's told it's just money, but it isn't. It's years of late nights, missed vacations, sacrifices made so someone else could feel safe. It's his effort, converted into numbers, divided by law, and handed over with a smile that says fairness. But fairness doesn't feel like fairness when one person starts over debt-free and the other starts over in debt. She gets stability, he gets the bill, and even when she's not malicious, the system makes her the beneficiary of his breakdown. Because in divorce, financial support isn't seen as help, it's seen as obligation. The assumption is baked in, he's the provider, even when the marriage is over. He carries the weight of love long after it's gone. And the psychological effect of that imbalance runs deeper than most people admit. It's not just that he's paying money, it's that he's paying for failure. Every transaction is a reminder that what he built was dismantled, and that he's financing the life she's rebuilding without him. Meanwhile, society frames her gain as justice. She deserves a new start, they say. But what about him? Who funds his new start? Who rebuilds his security? Who reminds him that his worth isn't tied to his wallet? No one. Because men aren't allowed to need support, only to give it. For her, financial comfort softens the pain. For him, financial strain compounds it. She reinvents herself with freedom he financed. He reinvents himself under pressure he didn't choose. And while she learns to live again, he learns how to survive again. That's the cruel symmetry of modern divorce. The side that's emotionally supported also gets financially protected. The side that's emotionally isolated also gets financially punished. He loses more than money. He loses the validation that his effort meant something. And when that's gone, when the system turns his years of sacrifice into a monthly invoice, he stops seeing himself as a man rebuilding, and starts seeing himself as a man repaying a debt to the past. After divorce, something invisible shifts. Not just the money, but the emotional energy. It's almost as if both people enter a new economy, but only one side is liquid. She collects emotional deposits immediately, support from friends, validation from social media, comfort from a culture built to sympathize. Every "you're so strong" becomes currency. Every post about healing earns approval. She's emotionally funded. He, on the other hand, goes bankrupt overnight. His primary source of emotional stability was her, and when she leaves, the account closes. Men don't have emotional safety nets. They don't call friends to cry. They don't post quotes about healing. They go quiet, work longer hours, lift heavier weights, drive faster at night, not to escape her, but to silence themselves. That's why men don't move on. They move inward, and while she grows louder in her recovery, he becomes invisible in his. She's rewarded for feeling. He's punished for it. Society praises her vulnerability and labels his grief as weakness. She reinvests emotionally. New hobbies, new connections, new identity. He reinvests functionally. New job, new apartment, new budget. One heals through expression, the other survives through suppression. The result? She re-emerges brighter. He reappears colder. Both changed, but not in the same direction. She withdraws her pain and deposits it into her new self. He keeps his pain as collateral, a debt he pays in silence. The emotional system favors her because she's allowed to feel. He's expected to forget. The cruelest part is that she's not trying to win. She's trying to cope. But the very tools that help her recover are the ones he was never given. And so her healing looks like progress, while his restraint looks like failure. He's told to open up, but when he does, no one listens long enough to understand. So he stops. And when he stops, people say, "See, he never cared." But that's not true. He cared so deeply that he couldn't afford to show it anymore. In the emotional economy of divorce, empathy is unevenly distributed. She's seen as healing. He's seen as hardened. Yet both are just reacting to the same wound, differently financed, differently expressed, equally misunderstood. Every man thinks he's strong enough, until he realizes that strength means nothing when the ground beneath him disappears. Divorce doesn't just take love from a man, it strips away the structure that gave him meaning. The house he built, the responsibilities he carried, the sense of being needed, all of it was the architecture of his masculinity. And now it's rubble. Men don't fear loneliness, they fear uselessness. A man can survive solitude if he still feels valuable. But after divorce, that sense of value dissolves. He's no longer a protector, no longer a provider. He's just a man with time, and time for men is dangerous. It gives space for memory, regret, and self-blame to echo endlessly. He doesn't talk about it because he's been trained not to. Society tells men that emotional resilience means suppression, that composure equals control, so he stays silent, not out of pride, but because he doesn't know what language to use for pain that deep. The truth is, men fall apart differently. Women unravel outward, tears, therapy, reinvention. Men implode inward, alcohol, anger, isolation. Both are forms of mourning, but only one is recognized as healing. The other is mistaken for indifference. And here's the paradox. The collapse is both destruction and opportunity. When everything external is gone, he's left with himself, raw and unarmored. For the first time, he's forced to see who he really is without the roles he used to play. Some never recover from that. Others rebuild into something unshakable. A man who no longer needs validation to feel valuable. But to reach that place, he has to stop trying to repair what's lost and start redefining what's worth building. Because divorce doesn't break every man. It only breaks the version of him that depended on someone else to define his worth. Every collapse carries a cruel gift, the chance to rebuild without illusion. But most men don't see it at first. In the ashes of divorce, they only see what's gone: the home, the partnership, the daily rituals that once made life feel meaningful. What they don't realize is that everything that was taken was never truly theirs. It was borrowed identity, conditional purpose. Divorce, as brutal as it feels, strips a man of everything false so he can finally meet himself without distraction. The pain is purification. When you've lost everything, there's no need to perform anymore. You stop being the provider, the fixer, the peacekeeper, and you start becoming a man for yourself, not for approval. It's a quiet awakening that doesn't come from books or coaches or revenge. It comes from sitting alone in the wreckage long enough to realize you're still breathing, that life didn't end, it reset. Men who face that pain instead of numbing it, rebuild differently. They rise not with rage but with clarity. They stop chasing validation and start mastering presence. They work out not to look strong, but to feel grounded. They rebuild careers not to prove something, but to create freedom. Slowly, the man who once lived for a family begins to live from his core. That's the paradox of collapse. The man who once thought he lost everything eventually realizes he was losing himself all along. The destruction wasn't punishment, it was instruction. The world broke him open so he could stop outsourcing his identity and start owning it. Divorce doesn't just take your past, it gives you the opportunity to build a future based on truth, not dependency. And the men who understand that don't stay broken, they evolve. The ones who don't, they spend years fighting ghosts, trying to rebuild a house that was meant to burn. Collapse isn't the end, it's the test. You either rebuild consciously, or you repeat unconsciously. For a while she seems to win. The world applauds her glow-up, her newfound confidence, her carefully curated rebirth. Her social circle expands, her calendar fills, her energy rises. But underneath the surface of empowerment lies something far less glamorous. The quiet echo of everything she thought she'd escaped. Because freedom without fulfillment is just another kind of cage. At first, she thrives on novelty. New experiences, new attention, new independence. But the dopamine that once made her feel unstoppable eventually begins to fade. The excitement that used to silence regret no longer works. She scrolls through old photos, not out of longing but out of confusion. She got what she wanted, so why does she still feel hollow? The answer is in the paradox. A woman can win the world and still lose her peace if what she was chasing wasn't growth, but validation. Divorce often rewards her externally while impoverishing her internally. She may become richer in freedom, money, and approval, but poorer in depth, intimacy, and stability. The empowerment she gained came with an invisible price tag, the loss of meaning. Meanwhile, the man she left, the one who looked broken, forgotten, discarded, begins to rebuild quietly, not for revenge, not for show, but for self-respect. The same silence that once suffocated him becomes the soil of his transformation. 5 years later, their stories look different. He has peace that doesn't need an audience. She has attention that doesn't fill the silence. He rebuilt from rock bottom. She's still climbing emotional stairs that lead nowhere. This isn't punishment, it's the pendulum of polarity. One side rebuilt from loss, the other avoided it. And that's why one finds wholeness while the other keeps searching. Because the truth no one wants to admit is this: divorce doesn't make women happier, it just gives them permission to distract themselves longer. In the end, divorce isn't the destruction of love, it's the revelation of what love actually was. It peels back the layers of illusion both people built to survive the comfort of routine. It shows who loved selflessly and who loved conditionally. It exposes whether the relationship was built on connection or convenience, on respect or reassurance. Love by itself isn't enough to survive the storm. Awareness is, presence is, and most couples lose that long before the divorce papers ever arrive. By the time the signatures are written, love hasn't died. It's just been buried under years of neglect, resentment, and unmet expectations. For men, divorce reveals how much of their identity was borrowed from being needed. For women, it exposes how much of their happiness depended on being desired. Both lose something they shouldn't have tied their worth to, and both are forced to face themselves without the mirror of the other. Some call that tragedy, but it's also truth, because once everything collapses, the love that remains, if any, is finally clean. Not romantic, not possessive, just clear. You see where you gave too much and where you held too little. You see who you were when things were easy and who you became when they weren't. Divorce doesn't end love, it clarifies it. It teaches that love without awareness becomes dependence, and awareness without love becomes loneliness. But the combination of both, that's what creates real connection. So don't fear the ending. Fear staying blind inside what's already over. Because loss doesn't ruin you, it refines you. And maybe that's the quiet reward of every heartbreak. Not that you get someone new, but that you finally meet yourself again. Your choice, your life. Start now.